Around 75% of Americans who bought homes between 2021 and 2022 have regretted that decision. Recently, I was reading about a home purchaser who regretted buying their home. This person was a young millennial like myself who had some extra cash, couldn't really travel much, and so they were just saving a ton of money and also just working from home. And because of lower interest rates, wanted to take advantage of the housing market and these mortgages. And because of the rush that they were feeling from just the news and people just saying, buy your house now, maybe pressure from their realtor, they bought a property in the summer of 2021. And now today in 2022, they regret that decision. Mainly because of the property itself. There was just some HOA issues with them buying the property. Also on top of that, there were a few repairs that they didn't know about until after they moved into the property. And so that just adds more to their expense. And this is the story of a lot of homeowners across the country over the past 2 years. They bought properties that didn't really fit their long-term goals or their living situation. Yes, you bought a property that had a bigger yard and 2 extra bedrooms because you were working from home. Now that you're working in the office, you don't actually need that extra space or that extra amount of mortgage payment to be paid in your expenses. And so a lot of home buyers are having remorse over buying these properties. And so in today's video, we're just going to discuss that and how it has a huge impact on the housing market crisis that we're dealing with. I would like to know your story. Did you all buy a property within the past 2 to 3 years during the pandemic? Do you regret that decision? Did you make a smart financial move? I will speak about my story a little bit later in this video, so please be sure to like this video and also subscribe to this channel as I post more videos about the economy, especially the housing market and the ups and downs and just the economy as a whole. So the stat that 75% of people regret buying their homes over the past 2 years came from Anytime Estimates American Home Buyer Survey. They also stated that there was a combination of rising prices, few options to choose from, and that extreme time pressure meant that some buyers really ended up at a home that was less than ideal. They also stated that the median amount was around $495,000, with almost a third paying over ask. And so you have a lot of people buying homes that didn't fit exactly what they were looking for. They paid over the median home price across the country. A third of them paid over asking price. And yeah, I understand towards the end of 2020, when housing prices started to increase, a lot of home buyers did feel that pressure because yeah, if they waited to buy their house maybe a month or 2 months later, that same home was probably worth around 5 to 10% higher in certain areas. And so you have a lot of home buyers who bought properties where they didn't exactly like the location. They bought properties that were a bigger fixer-upper than what they anticipated. And a lot of them buying properties where they didn't even see the property. They bought it sight unseen. And so the combination of all of that made people buy homes where, of course, you regret it if those factors are true. Imagine buying a property that you never see, that has way more issues than you expect, and the location is actually not the best location. Maybe your realtor told you something else. Of course, you're going to regret that decision, especially when you see that the economy is going into a recession. And so what impact, this sentiment, does that have on the housing market? And so, yeah, a lot of home buyers have buyer remorse. And then on top of that, potential home buyers, their perspective on the economy is pretty low. And so they have a low confidence on buying homes. And that's not good for the housing market at all. According to a Fannie Mae purchase sentiment, consumers are increasingly pessimistic about home buying and home selling conditions. Only 16% of respondents said that now is a good time to buy a home, while the percentage who believe now is a good time to sell a home continued to decline. And so, yes, you have this double whammy. And this is why this recession is so different than all the other recessions that we have. Because last recession, home prices actually went down and you could have gotten a good deal. And maybe home prices will go down. Maybe it's just going to take a little bit longer. Maybe by 2024, we'll have home prices where it's a great of enough discount, even though we have slightly higher interest rates, that it's affordable for the average consumer. But right now we have a market where home buyers are not buying properties because they don't believe in the economy. And then on top of that, we have sellers who are not selling a property because they're not going to sell their property less than what their neighbors sold their property earlier this year. And so, as you all can see, this sentiment and this remorse that buyers and sellers have makes the housing market more difficult, makes the collapse in this crisis even bigger now. Because you essentially make the sector non-existent. Of course, you're going to have people buy homes and sell homes, but it's just very stagnant at the moment. The other effect this home buyer's remorse and home buyer sentiment has on the housing economy is that a lot of people are not applying for mortgages as much. And this is actually a good thing because this is what the Fed is wanting. They want lower activity, not necessarily lower activity, but lower prices in the economy with the housing market. And so you have mortgage applications fall. On top of mortgage applications decreasing, you also have new construction homes decreasing. According to D.R. Horton, one of the country's biggest home builders, their first-time application or the number of new sales that they have decreased around 15%. And that decrease of 15% is compared to a year ago. And so, yes, you have a slowdown in the economy. And the thing is that demand is actually pretty high for housing, but the supply is short. The supply was short during the pandemic, and it's even getting shorter during the recession because these home builders, why would they build more homes if they can't make as much money? And so they may select a few properties to build, some high-priced ones, some more affordable ones. And so our supply is still short, but our demand is still relatively high. But now people are not going to buy a home if it's too expensive, obviously, because if they can't get a loan for a property, they are not going to buy the property unless they have cash to buy the property. And so that's why this housing market, as I stated before, is just so different because it doesn't make exact sense. And maybe because the pandemic didn't make sense. We had a world illness affect the entire economy of global markets, right? And so you have this weird outcome from that was unpredictable, that the government, the Fed, is trying to fix, but ultimately those mistakes and that fix falls upon us as consumers in the form of higher prices still and higher borrowing costs. Now, I was one of these people that bought a home during 2022. I actually bought it at the peak of everything in May of 2022. That's when it actually closed. And I was looking on stat online. I think that was probably the peak of medium home price. And I bought a property. But the thing is, on this channel, I talk about real estate investing and I talk about staying and sticking with your budget and making sure you can cash flow as soon as you buy an investment property. And so with this property, I was able to put a little bit more down because I was required to, because this was an investment property, not a personal owner occupied property. And so that would be my first tip, to stick with your budget, try to put a larger down payment so you can have enough equity to weather any change in home prices going lower or anything of that nature. And then on top of that, make sure you buy property that's relatively in good condition, where you don't have to put so much money into it, where labor and material costs are still relatively high. And so look for a fairly new property with updated plumbing or updated roof or electrical systems, and the HVAC is working and everything of that nature. Make sure you inspect all of that before closing on the property. And so since I started cash flowing from day one and actually bought this property lower than asking price, I don't have any remorse with this property. I've been making money every month since I closed on that property. And yes, I did some updates on the property. I put in gutters on the property. It was an older property, but there wasn't any major issues. I did do some extra stuff that I didn't need to do, like upgrade the electrical system, because the electrical system was working, but I decided to put in money to upgrade it. And then on top of that, I put in new windows. And so, yeah, just make sure it fits in your budget. If you can afford homes right now, buy a property if it's in a great location. But now is not the time to compromise on what you truly want. Make sure it's the location where you want, the price, the monthly payment, and the condition of everything is exactly what you want. And I think in today's market, we are heading more into a buyer's market. And so you're most likely to get those things. Yes, the prices are not exactly where we want, and the interest rates are not exactly where we want them to be, but sellers are now more open to talk. You can get those inspections. You can offer lower than asking price, and you can make sure you work with your realtor and make sure they don't pressure you and just stay firm. It's like, hey, I can't go above this amount. I know I'm not going to offer this amount. I recently had to tell a realtor that I was like, hey, I know for sure I'm not going to go over this amount or offer this amount. So just letting you know. And they were cool with it. And so you just have to do that with any agent you're working with. And hopefully your agent doesn't give you those weird pressures and because they're essentially just trying to make money. And so make sure you find one that you truly trust. All right, you all, let me know down below what you all think of buyer's remorse, home buyer's remorse, and just the sentiment around home sellers and home buyers at the moment. All right, talk to you all later.